Markets Now is brought to you by the 5-year anniversary of Brevant Seeds. Here's to 5 years of not just winning, but collecting one game-changing W after another. See all of our wins at brevant.com/wins.
Welcome to Markets Now. I'm Michelle Rook with Bryan Doherty of Total Farm Marketing. Grain seeing some pressure on Friday once again with the livestock futures and milk to the plus side. And Bryan, let's start off talking about grains in sum total. We had lower weekly closes and everything. How much of this was just weather versus some tariff concerns coming back into the market?
I think the tariff concerns are a player, but they're sort of adding a little more weight onto the bigger weight on the market, which is just good weather and the reality that it doesn't look like all of a sudden we're going to run into a real brutal hot and dry period during August. Remember, last year got pretty hot and dry, and a lot of farmers were disappointed in their bean yields. Being certainly affected. It doesn't look like that'll be the case this year. And in fact, the forecast over the last several days has generally had normal temperatures, above normal rainfall, and we've seen the bean market more so than corn come under pressure because of that.
So, Bryan, we had a lower weekly close in December corn. We had a lower monthly close in December corn, but we held the contract lows. Do we take those out here going forward, trying to price in this big crop?
I think one element we just didn't mention there is the old crop that has to come to town. So there's not going to be a shortage of supply moving into the marketplace. I think it's very likely to give perspective. Last year, December corn bottomed at 385, late August. More acres this year, a more highly rated crop compared to a year ago with less acres, a less poorly rated crop, 7% this year, last year 10%, same time window. So more acres, bigger supply, granted, bigger demand, stronger exports, reduced carryout, 500 million bushels from expectations about a year ago at this time because of such strong demand. But you got those increased acres. So for right now, it looks like the path of maybe least resistance is a continued sag in the market, potentially retesting last year's low.
Yeah. Soybeans, new lows for the move on Friday, lower weekly, lower monthly closes. Again, it's not just about yield here, it's also about demand, isn't it? So if we don't get China demand back, how low do we have to go?
Right. The market has to find some clearing forces. And Argentina lowering their tax, all of a sudden meal's cheaper. You have things out there that are also working against demand. But the big issue is twofold: is one, weather, and two, just a lack of signal to the end user to buy, and the speculator staying short the market. The weather forecast looks good all week. Prices have been down all week. Been the trend in recent weeks. And really, this goes back to mid-May when the weather really flipped from kind of I'm going to say brutal dry out west and then those hot 90-degree temperatures to more moderate temperatures, although warm throughout the summer, but it is summer, you get warm temperatures, but rain in the forecast weekly. I don't think there's been a day where I haven't seen rain on the radar somewhere in the Midwest, and the forecast continues to call for rain. So August is the key month for soybeans. I think they end up slipping into new lows or retesting the lows from earlier in the year. I've got a head and shoulders formation on charts. If you follow those, that's about another 50, 60 cents down in beans. So I just don't have anything today. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I just don't have anything today that tells me that either the market's not going to move lower or that the low is necessarily in.
And another disappointing day in the wheat market, new contract lows, I think, in Chicago wheat, anyways. But it was despite the fact that we had a sharply lower dollar.
Right. And then there's that, right? So I think the wheat might be a little bit more concerning from tariff perspectives and just how what that might look like. But there again, no friendly news. The managed money stays short. There's not a lot of risk when the trend's in your favor necessarily of adding to a position. I call it house money. So if the funds are short, managed money short, they can add to positions, test the waters. If there's not a lot of buy orders, you can see what happened this week. Wheat prices slip into new lows, likely uncovers sell stops. That adds a little more pressure to the market. Really like to have a robust, healthy wheat market to for the corn and soybeans to latch onto, and boy, that just isn't the case right now.
So let's talk about marketing strategies here, because as we're at these low prices, producers obviously don't want to sell here, but we've got, as you pointed out, we've got to get some old crop out of the way before the new crop comes. So what do we do?
Well, it's the same story that we run into a lot of years where you've all of a sudden got a big crop and farmers have got inventory on hand. uh, Farmers are only human. They don't want to sell a lot at lower prices in spring and look or feel foolish. Yet at the same time, they will forward contract. So a lot of times it's not unusual. Old corn, soybeans back in the bin. These are my words. We'll call them gambling stocks, but they're also maybe a hedge against forward sales that are in place to fill contracts in case there's a real disaster getting your crop planted or whatnot. Um, so now we're at a window where this product needs to find its way into town in order to make space. And so unfortunately, probably if somebody was forcing me today, I'd say sell it, get rid of it. I don't think there's any arrows that I have to point upward now, more so than I have a lot of arrows still pointing to sideways or lower. So get rid of the old crop. If you want to retain the ownership of that, talk to your advisor. Know how to do that. I think marketing right now is more important, Michelle, than ever. There's carry in the market to look at for new crop. There's option call premium that you can challenge the market to generate some revenue streams. That comes with lots of risk, though, and margin call potential. But these are the kind of things that really have to be looked at and measured carefully, and the risk measured versus, let's say, doing nothing. That's still a strategy. Yeah, maybe a good strategy, maybe a terrible strategy. Only time will tell.
Yeah. Do you think the grains also saw some money flow issues just because the outside markets were risk off today with the tariff news?
Yeah, and you'll see that. But what you've also seen the last 3 months or 2 months is you've seen an equity market, a stock market that has just rewarded the money flow into that market, and being short wheat, corn, beans reward that mindset. So it is possible we're starting to see a turning point maybe for both.
The cattle market ended higher. It was able to shake off the lower stock market, but got some help from higher cash. But did we negate the reversals from Thursday or not?
The market has been up so much that when we looked at Thursday, the big drop off, if you watched it during the day and all of a sudden you see cattle two, three, four, five plus dollars lower, you don't want to be chicken little, right? And the market did bounce back today, but it certainly is sending maybe a signal to the marketplace that buyers beware. The bigger question is can the demand side of the equation continue to surface to support cattle prices? I got to think that with cutout values and choice and select losing about $30 over the last month and cash cattle prices moving higher, that the packer is getting leery and may start to back away from the market at some point here. Remember, carcass weights are still heavy as well. So I'm just very cautious that the cattle market could be cautiously making the argument the cattle market could be trying to find a top. Plus, in theory, you've got the grilling season mostly behind, and August historically has not necessarily been the kindest month of cattle futures.
Let's also talk about the milk market, just a slight uptick on Friday, but we have looked at a chart and it looks like maybe we're trying to put a bottom in, do you think?
I'm going to use the word maybe. I'd
Okay.
like to think so. I think butter, cheese, blocks, barrels, they're showing some signs. We saw some advance in cheese prices today. I'd like to think that the market is. Keep in mind the overriding bearish tone in the milk complex. Really, you can push back to I think the most recent milk production report, and right across the board, revisions upward, more cows, more milk per cow. So again, more efficiency, more cows, more milk, more production, more supply. High prices for beef calves, crossbreeding, um, you know, uh, just every reason to think that the produce milk producers might continue to grow the herd. And sure enough, it showed up. And again, I'm going to hedge myself. The mentality sometimes I think in the dairy industry is that the way you get ahead is you outproduce your neighbor, you produce more, and that exasperates the problem. And I think one of the big disappointments in the milk market the last month has been this idea that we thought, or there were a lot of people thinking that, hey, this demand for cheese is real, it's good value, supplies could start to tighten up. That wasn't the case. Market really got hammered. Uh, now, now at levels again where we've seen the market clearing forces come in and utilize the supply, but I don't think we've had that catalyst either, where the end user, that is the processor, is ready to buy hand over fist. But maybe once one or two do, then it'll come in quickly. But the product market just isn't strong enough to support a rally at this point.
Well, appreciate your time as always, Bryan Doherty with Total Farm Marketing. That is Markets Now.
You were right.
You were right.
You were right.
Well, you were right. When you choose your seed brand, there's winning, and then there's...
You were right. Should have gone with Brevant seeds.
When you choose Brevant seeds, you don't just win, you get to be right. Don't just win, win. Talk with your retailer or visit Brevant.com/win to get started.